Let's explore how we see color using a computer animation. Our prism research reveals that we see all colors from various proportions of the primary colors cyan, magenta, and yellow, referred to as CMY, which combine to make black. The additive RGB colors, red, green, and blue, add together to make white. The RGB colors represent secondary colors of the CMY primaries. The RGB colors are represented by electromagnetic radiation, consisting of long, known as red, medium, green, and short wavelengths, blue, that are each detected by red, green, and blue cone cells in the retina at the back of the human eye. The three RGB cone cells are each connected to the three CMY primary colors that are coded in the brain. In particular, the red cone connects to cyan, the green cone connects to magenta, and the blue cone connects to yellow. In the absence of light, each cone cell sends a maximal signal to the CMY center in the brain that codes for black. In other words, cyan plus magenta plus yellow equals black. When white light enters the eye, the long wavelengths of light are absorbed by the red cone, medium wavelengths are absorbed by the green cone, and short wavelengths are absorbed by the blue cone. This absorption of white light abolishes the outgoing current from each cone cell, which is interpreted in the brain as white. This next slide shows a schematic color simulator that illustrates how color is perceived in the eye. Each RGB cone cell is depicted by a box with a red, green, or blue dial, and the outgoing current from each cone cell is connected to the CMY color center in the brain to produce a perceived color. An important feature of our model is that the red, green, and blue cone cells each send out separate signals of 100% electric current to the brain in the absence of light, which codes for black. In the presence of white light that contains long, medium, and short wavelengths, depicted by the red, green, and blue wavy lines, equal amounts of the red, green, and blue light are absorbed by the RGB cones, which reduces the output current to the brain and gives rise to various grays. We get the sensation of white paper or white paint when the white light intensity is adjusted to 80% of saturation. When the light intensity is increased to 100%, we get the sensation of white light from a computer screen because the absorption of 100% white light causes the outgoing current from each cone cell to decrease down to zero. To understand how yellow is perceived in the eye, let's first have a look at how a yellow circle on a black background refracts into red and green circles when viewed through a prism. Turning the yellow circle and refracting it a few times before we pull it apart shows that yellow consists of red and green components. Pulling the cyan layer in the background away from the black background reveals a hole where the red circle was. Pulling the yellow layer away reveals a hole in the magenta layer where the green circle was. These holes represent the absorption of red and green wavelengths of light. This animation, therefore, illustrates how the yellow circle refracts into red and green circles when viewed through a prism. Our schematic color simulator shows how red and green light add together to produce the sensation of yellow. The absorption of long and medium wavelengths by the red and green cones cause their outgoing currents to go to zero, which subtracts cyan and magenta in the brain. Since the blue cone does not absorb red or green light, the blue cone continues to send a yellow signal to the brain to form the sensation of yellow. Let's now have a look at how a red circle on a black background refracts into magenta and yellow components when viewed through a prism. Let's refract it a couple of times with computer animation, then turn it in perspective, and return the refracted circle to its natural state. Pulling the cyan from the background shows that we see the red circle by deleting cyan. Pulling the yellow layer from the red background once again shows the red circle is a combination of magenta and yellow. Our schematic color simulator explains how red light causes a subtraction of cyan in the brain to produce the sensation of red. The absorption of long wavelength light by the red cone causes its outgoing current to go to zero, which subtracts cyan in the brain. Since the green and blue cones do not absorb red light, the green cone sends a magenta signal and the blue cone sends a yellow signal that are combined in the brain to form the sensation of red. Let's have a look at how a brown circle on a white background refracts into cyan, magenta, and yellow components when viewed through a prism. Notice as we pull back looking through the prism that the brown circle is composed of 22% cyan, 50% magenta, and 75% yellow. Through computer animation, we'll turn the refracted brown circle and pull it apart, revealing that it's composed of 3 circles of cyan, magenta, and yellow, various percentages of color. Our schematic color simulator explains how a light mixture consisting of 78% red, 50% green, and 25% blue add together to produce the sensation of brown. The absorption of the 78% red light component by the red cone causes its outgoing current to be diminished by 78%, which reduces the cyan signal in the brain down to 22%. The absorption of the 50% green light component by the green cone causes its outgoing current to be diminished by 50%, which reduces the magenta signal in the brain by 50%. The absorption of the 25% blue light component by the blue cone causes its outgoing current to be diminished by 25%, which reduces the yellow signal in the brain down to 75%. The mathematical sum of the 22% cyan, 50% magenta, and 75% yellow signals in the brain combine together to generate the sensation of brown. Let's use our CMY color theory to understand how computers, smartphones, and TVs use RGB pixels to generate color. Although there are different types and styles of RGB pixels, in essence, each pixel is a separate red, green, or blue light that can be switched on and off electronically in various proportions from 0 to 255, making a color picture. The 255 represents the brightest signal and 0 represents darkness. When the red, green, and blue pixels are each lit to a maximum level at 255, this light turns off the CMY in the brain and produces a sensation of white. A black pixel represents 0 light emission, and the absence of light allows the red, green, and blue cone cells in the eye to each send a maximal signal to the CMY color center in the brain and produce the sensation of black. An orange pixel is formed when the red pixel is at 255 and the green pixel is at 127, while the blue is 0. A magenta pixel is formed when the red and blue pixels are each at 255, which turns off cyan and yellow in the brain and produces the sensation of magenta in the brain. Let's see how the pixels make a picture on a computer screen. You see no pixels at 144 pixels. Reducing it to 6 pixels shows the pixels still has some form. 3 pixels really distorts the picture. Let's take one flesh tone colored pixel and analyze its RGB components. The red pixel is at 220, green pixel is 144, and blue pixel is 123, which each combine together to give the sensation of a flesh tone. 14% cyan plus 44% magenta plus 52% yellow. The color RGB slider at the top of the page is from Photoshop.